Welcome back to the Gardening with Joe and Holly radio show. We're going to talk about compost, but first, a word from our friends at Farmers Defense.
Farm and garden in the ultimate comfort. Farmers Defense has a lightweight and durable sleeves made to protect you against the elements while farming. Farmers sleeves offer unparalleled protection of arms and skin for any farmer, gardener, or outdoor worker. Say goodbye to irritated skin and sunburns in the garden. Their sleeves offer cooling comfort and protection against the elements outdoors. An alternative to thick clothing, Farmers Defense is made of a wicking material with UBF protection factor 50 plus to protect you from allergens and scratches. To find all their great products and more, visit farmersdefense.com.
Well, compost, Holly, we can't never make enough of it, so there's options on when you or where you should or can purchase it from. So compost is the lifeblood of a garden. It is a great additive that you can add to soil that may not be as good as you would like it to be. You can grow in 100% compost. We have done that for a number of years, and it's worked quite well. So compost in the garden. Where do we get it?
So you want to first you can buy it, and so you can contact a local garden center, a local sometimes there's places that just only sell things like topsoil, fill, compost, gravel, etc. I don't know what you call those places, but there are those locations. I guess that would be like a landscape supply probably.
Right.
Yeah. I know there's one not too far from us that they sell basically just like landscape supply companies.
Well, if you're in the Milwaukee area, Blue Ribbon Organics
right.
for compost.
Right. So that's, you can also, a lot of times if you know of a company like Blue Ribbon Organics, you can do a store locator as well. So that's one option, is to buy it. Now,
not all compost that is free is good.
Right. So we were going to talk about free compost.
Right.
And so a lot of times people in their municipalities, here's an option. You can come fill up your car or whatever, get this free compost. I guess maybe you would fill up a truck. You probably wouldn't put compost directly in the trunk of your car.
I've done it. You put
right.
you put a tarp down.
Right. I'm not saying that we wouldn't.
It can be done.
I'm just saying that some people might not want to do that.
Maybe uncomfortable for them.
Right. Yeah. They might have different needs. A
trunk full of compost in the Cadillac may not be what some people may.
But back up that 99 Honda.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, yeah. So that's one thing is that it's like free might come at a cost. You don't necessarily know where that compost is coming from. If it's something where they just collected everybody's yard scraps and made the compost, that's a little dicey. And
if they're collecting yard scraps, people have the tendency to throw anything in that pile because it disappears.
Right. And that's the thing is, if you think about it, like if you had a huge way to get rid of stuff, especially your yard waste, you're like, it's going to the city. Let me just put this in here. Who cares? And something they don't care, but it's more or less like Joey said, they're getting rid of it.
So the reason why that can be bad is people spray chemicals on all sorts of plant life, predominantly weed and feed on grass. Weed and feed contains a chemical that is designed to kill any broadleaf plant. Lamb's quarter, dandelions, fill in the blank. So that it absorbs into the leaf of the plant. You cut the grass, you bag the grass, you put the grass for the municipality to pick up. That is so persistent, it's still in the grass. In the breakdown process, in the compostable process, and this happens if you do it or the city does it, that still is active, such an active ingredient that when you apply it to your garden, it will and it can very much damage or disform your broadleaf plants, your peppers, your eggplants, your potatoes, your green beans, because that 2,4-D, that broadleaf chemical that's in weed and feed, is still active, and it can take many years to ratify the problem.
Absolutely, and that's something that you want to keep in mind with that free compost, is it could contain the 2,4-D.
Even with horse manure, the broadleaf spray called Killer Compost, you can search that term, that is a big concern now, that it will damage or disform your broadleaf plants.
It's definitely not something that you want to quote unquote mess with, especially when you're growing vegetables and you spend all that time whether it be starting seeds or just planting the seeds, and then all of a sudden your vegetables are not looking so good.
So there's a couple of ways in order to figure this out. One, if you're getting manure from a farm and you're going to age that to compost, you can ask the farmer, hey, what are the animals eating, and have you sprayed anything on the feed as a grass and then baled it up for the feed? If you're getting it from a municipality, that is not a very simple question to ask, because one part of the pile may be good and the center may be bad, and the far left portion might be a mixture of both.
And there's no way to tell. It's not like the city yard guy is like, oh, this came from the house
Right.
that sprays the lawn. They're not going to know that.
The only way you're going to know is if you take a small sample and try to plant some beans, because they're rapid growers, and in 5 to 7 days you can see them sprout, and if there's any disformity because it's picking up that chemical in the compost, then you know it's bad soil. But then you got to figure out, the problem is, did they mix that pile again because more people dug out of it and they just piled it all together with a front loader and mixed it all again? So keep that in mind if you are attempting to do such, because
I mean, it's free, so you could just take what you need, do the test grow, and then I guess if you don't want it, you could always
put it
use
back in the street for them to take it back. We've had people at Garden Talk say, hey, I've gotten city municipality compost and here's what's happening, and it's been that. We've also had people who have composted their own lawn clippings and had lots and lots of cubic feet of compost, and they've been spraying weed and feed on their grass, and then they've put that toxified compost in the garden, and the remitigation of the process in order to get that out of the soil is a multi-year deal with a natural process.
And it's not your fault, because you might have grown up where your parent or whoever sprays their lawn with weed and feed, and then, oh, this is what my grandpa used, and then you go to the garden center and you see that, and it looks familiar in your head, and you're like, oh, it's fine. Why would my family poison me? And it's not that they're poisoning you, but you are poisoning your possible compost.
Anytime you purchase compost from a reputable landscape place or garden center, anybody that I have talked to, they have a tracking mechanism in which they know where it came from and the sources in which it was made from. So if there is an issue, they can track back that particular batch to know what's going on. Now, let's just add kitchen scraps to our garden. Can we do that? Do we have to worry about animals? What happens?
I would say kitchen scraps, as long as it's not anything that involves dairy, meat bones, any sort of bones like that, and then dairy. Yeah,
dairy, cheese. Now, you could add that. That can be added to a compost pile, assuming the caveat is if you've got a pile that's way far away in a back corner of a field somewhere that you're just dumping everything and just letting nature, the raccoons and the possums, dig through it and break it down over a course of a couple of years. If you're in a residential area, you want to avoid those, because those are attractee items, and even if you just bury them in the garden, meaning you dig a 1 foot deep trench, pour them in, and then cover them up, they're going to dig that out. So your scrap vegetables, those type of potato peels, shredded paper, those can be dumped in a trench in the garden, and you want to mark that, because you want to not necessarily plant, let's say, tomatoes over that patch this year, but by next year it'll be broke down to where it will feed the plants in that area.
Right, and that's a good tip. And there's options like that to put things. There's also products that you can purchase to speed up the compost process.
Right. Certain compost bins, tumblers, that type of thing. And there's a multitude of resources online that will indicate things that you didn't know could ever go in a compost pile that you are probably throwing out. And if you are concerned about landfills and filling them up with unnecessary compostable items, those can be not given to the city for trash pickup, but put in your compost pile for recycling or remitigating of the soil in your garden.
Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that when you are composting yourself that there are different methods. There's
Yes.
tumblers. There's hot composting. There's cold or passive composting. So some of them might work better for you. And then depending where you live, there might be some sort of municipal or HOA or whatever sort of rule guideline where sometimes it has to be contained.
You can do it, but here's how you have to do it.
Sometimes it has to be XYZ
Right.
feet away from your neighbors or your house or whatever. So it's good to keep that in mind, especially sometimes with those HOAs. They can be a little funny.
They can just be problems.
Problems, yes.
They can be problems.
Yes.
There are people that live in HOAs right now that are going, yes, there are problems. Well, Holly, spring it's going to be start warming up sooner or later. We know spring is getting closer, and we all will want to enjoy the yard without sharing it with those beetles and grubs.
Yeah, with spring just around the corner, it's time to start thinking about controlling beetles and grubs in your yard or your garden or wherever.
Grub Gone can be applied to your turf or garden or around ornamentals to control those grubs and lessen the impact that those beetles have on your yard. This summer, easy to use, apply with a commercial spreader or irrigate right into the soil biologically, specifically to target those beetle invaders without harming those beneficial insects such as bees, butterflies, and ladybugs.
And it's only been the non-chemical that works. You can find out more at phyllumbioproducts.com. That's PHYLLOM bioproducts.com. phyllumbioproducts.com. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.